Okay. All right. So before I start, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. So for today, since we don't have enough participants in the webinar, so as I said, we'll just continue with the multi-time frame analysis. Here I chosen USDJPY for us to study. So first of all, when I do my analysis, I usually start on the monthly time frame. So the main reason for this is we, as a trader, needs to understand where the market is trying to go and what is it trying to do. So obviously, the three time frames that very important for you to analyze first is obviously monthly, weekly, and daily time frame. Okay, so when you know what the higher time frame is trying to do, then obviously the smaller time frame will adjust to whatever setup is available to us. Okay, so because our main technique is BBMA, and in BBMA there's only two setups that we are allowed to entry. In BBMA there's only two setups, which is MHB and re-entry. So for the sake of today, what I usually look for on a particular entry is REM, which is the re-entry, extreme, and MSB. So the re-entry should be at the higher time frame, extreme at the middle time frame, and obviously the smaller time frame will be MSB. So there are two setups within this particular code. That's why I'm particularly specifically like to do my entries on based on REM, because during REM, the lowest time frame will be the Bollinger Band is sideways during that process. Hence, it's much more safer for you to entry on a sideways Bollinger Band than a momentum Bollinger Band. So you don't float too far away when you did wrong entry. Okay. So let's proceed with analysis. So as I said, we'll start with monthly first. So on the monthly time frame, what you need to look for is obviously signals or setup. So on the monthly time frame, I don't see any setups. However, I only see a particular signal, which is we have CS direction for sell. Okay, so that's an indication that there's a positive indication that the market's going to go down. So obviously, we have um, we have an MHB here a few months ago. So usually when the market is trying to go back to that particular area, then you need to mark this zone in order for you to have a particular point for you to refer. Okay, so I'll just mark this. Okay. And usually this is color blue, so I know that it's for a buy zone. So as you can see, as I put that line on the lowest body of this particular month on 1st August 2016, sorry, this one here, what month is it? Alright, yeah, that's August. Okay, sorry, it's September. So this is the lowest body of this particular MSB, because on an MSB you have four characteristics. The first one is obviously you have an extreme. Okay, so you have an extreme buy over here. So the definition of extreme is obviously MA is outside of the Bollinger Band. So we have MA low 5 outside of the Bollinger Band. And then you have TP1G over here. Okay, and then you have an MSB. So basically, what happens here is you have a candle that couldn't break low BB, and then you have a reverse candle, and then now you have a retest. So that's the retest over there. So this is what we have over here is an MHB. Okay. So you have an MHB and you have candlestick Arafuku over here. Okay. However, now this candlestick Arafuku, after that it goes down for pullback. So you have a re-entry buy over here. However, during the period of series of months, there wasn't any candle that couldn't break Mahi 5 and 10. So obviously the sellers are quite dominant at this particular point. So you know that even though there's a re-entry buy over here, then the market couldn't go up according to the BBMA SOP, because according to this SOP over here, it's a re-entry buy in middle BB. So based on that SOP, it should actually travel um, at what do you call this, top BB, minimum of 3 candles. However, these candles couldn't even manage to break top Mahi 5 and 10. Okay, so then now you have a candlestick Arafuku cell, which invalidates this particular candlesticks, because as for the trend line that we have on a monthly time frame, it's still going downwards. Okay, so that's one of the information that you can derive from this. All right. So based on this trend line, sorry. So you just have to bear with me because I'm using BBMA, combining it with support and resistance, and also Fibonacci. So FMCBR. So I do combine all my techniques so just to come up with a much more solid analysis. Okay. So let me just reorganize things over here. All right. So as you can see, it's more like a bullish pennant on the monthly time frame. We're still talking about monthly time frame right now. Okay. So this is more like a bullish pennant. So let me just open it up. Let me just find out. Okay. So okay, let me just find a good example over here. Okay. So just sharing another screen over here. So basically, I just found this. I just literally scrolled at Google just look for a bullish pennant example. So as you can see over here, it looks like roughly more like what's happening at UJ. And we just find other examples. So just give me a few seconds over here. Okay. Um, it doesn't allow me to join it. Let me just find a good example of bullish pennant. All right, here we go. Okay. Here. So, can you all see this screen over here? So, although we trade BBNA, I usually like to, take a little bit of information from other different techniques. So it helps guide you to come up with a much more solid analysis, and obviously it helps you to come up with a much more better decision for trading. So as you can see over here, UJ monthly looks more like a bullish pennant in a way. So let me just close this. All right. So as you can see over here, is like a triangle shape. So if you don't know anything about this, don't bother. To be honest with you, BBMA in basics is already powerful enough. However, if you have other other techniques that will help you and guide you to have a much more better grasp of what's happening and what the market is trying to do. So obviously, based on the BBMA itself, this is a sideways Bollinger Band. As soon as this candle breaks middle BB, the next target should be at lower BB. So that indicates to us that the market is trying to go down to monthly slow BB, which also, based on support and resistance, is trying to go back to this support and resistance. So usually, what we have here is resistance, and then there's a breakout, and then you have this point as now as a support. So now over here, there's support and resistance flip. So resistance becomes support over here. It also became support again at a particular point. So there's a possibility that it can become support, or it might do a breakout over here. So that we don't know yet because the market hasn't gone to that point yet. Okay. So even at that juncture, we already have a rough idea what the monthly time frame is trying to do. So it's trying to go down. Okay. So let me just delete all these objects over here. All right, so we're settled with monthly, but there's still one last thing that you need to understand is that is this huge candle over here. If we look at a much more bigger time frame, it will look there's no other bigger time frame than a monthly. However, if you look at it at a quarter monthly time frame, okay, it will look like a big candlestick of a bear candlestick, and you have a bull candlestick over here. So in a bigger time frame, this will look like a bearish engulfing. Okay, let me just fix it up for you. So in reality, what we have here is a bearish engulfing pattern in the monthly time frame. So we know that the market is going down. Okay, that's another good example of other things that might help you to do your analysis. So once you're done with the monthly time frame, then you move on to the weekly time frame. So the same process goes again. You need to find out what are the signals and setup that is available for you, because first is you find signals so that you can narrow down your entry point at the setup. So right now we don't have any signals. We only have we don't have any setups. We only have a signal, which is candlestick momentum over here. So based on candlestick momentum, the definition for it, okay, which always people are confused about, is first things first is a candlestick momentum definition is a CS that close outside BB. That's the first wrong interpretation of CSM. What people need to know is the candle that closed outside a momentum Bollinger Band. Okay, that's the most important thing that people need to understand. So if you see over here, there's a candle that breaks low BB. It looks like a momentum. Unfortunately, it goes back up because it's not a momentum, because this is a sideways Bollinger Band. So how would you know that this is a sideways Bollinger Band? Because during the market movement, you will not be able to detect momentum Bollinger Band when the market goes down, because the top and low BB are dynamic. They move while that candle moves. So you don't know how to judge whether this is a momentum Bollinger Band or a sideways Bollinger Band. So if you're looking at weekly, okay, let's say for example over here, weekly, how you will find out that this is a momentum Bollinger Band or a sideways Bollinger Band is obviously you need to find a setup that is a reversal setup for this particular downtrend. So right now we have the candles going down. So you need to look at the third time frame for you to find out whether there is reversal indication. So let me just find that out. Okay, so over here, this is what you have. You have a double extreme at a H4 time frame, and there's a reversal over here. Okay, so there's the reversal that we were looking for at this point. So when you have this candlestick Arakuko, you know that there will be a reversal on the H4 time frame. And even though if you look at H1 as well, let me just look for that, then there should be a much more clearer setup for you to understand. Okay, so on the H1 you also have MHB as well. So this one allows you to actually enter the market on a buy market, because let me just, so there is, you have a re-entry buy over here for that particular market. Okay, so let's just go back to weekly. So what weekly what we need to do with weekly is, first of all, we need to find signals and setup. So the definition of CSM in a nutshell is it's a candlestick that closes outside the momentum linear band. So what is the momentum linear band? The momentum linear band, and let me just, okay, all right, let me just write it down for you. All right, so in my books, momentum Bollinger Band is obviously a Bollinger Band that is pointing away from each other. So top and low are pointing away from each other, and then you have a candlestick momentum. So that's uh, your momentum Bollinger Band. Okay. So CSM is not finished yet, because there are other points that we need to know about CSM. So the second thing that we need to know about CSM is that it's a signal of market strength. Okay, so what it tells us is that there's a strength in the market going down over here on a weekly time frame. And obviously the last very important thing that we need to understand with CSM is that every CSM will create a re-entry. So why is it so important to us? It's because it tells us that there is an impending setup coming later on. Okay, so you have CSM, then you will have a re-entry at some point. Okay, so that's what we need to understand. All right, so based on this weekly time frame, there's a lot of information that we can already digest over here. Okay, so first of all is basically we are able to see that if we're using trend lines, then obviously this is an uptrend, and this should be a point of re-entry buy. However, there is a trend line breakout over here, so we know that the market is going downwards from now on. Okay, so what we can do with this information is, obviously now there's a market trend going down. However, we will need to retrace at some point to give us a point of entry sell. Okay, so that's one of the most important things that for you to understand is for you to be able to see and predict where the market is trying to go, and to be able to know what you're supposed to do at that point. What are you supposed to see for you to be able to enter the market? Okay. So on the weekly, we have CSM. So let me just delete all of this. Let's go to daily. So weekly also states that it's going down. All right. So what do we have on the daily market? So daily, obviously, it tells me, okay, market's going down on the trend line, MA50 above, USDJPY down. It's a downtrend. So you have an extreme over here. You have TPYG, it goes down, doesn't break Malo, goes up again, couldn't break middle BB, goes back down. So you have first indication, second characteristics of buy MHB. Okay, so you have a candle that couldn't break low BB, but it's not closed yet until Monday. Okay, so we know that there's no setup for us in the daily because obviously the setup was here, re-entry sell over here. So now we can't do much. We can't do anything much with the information at daily. However, what we do have here is obviously there's a retracement happening on the lower time frame over here. So if there's a retracement going up, so you know that the market is trying to create a re-entry on a much lower time frame. Okay, so now monthly, weekly, daily, all these higher time frame tells us the market's going down. Obviously, we started with monthly. We already have deducted that it's trying to go to lower BB. On the weekly time frame, we have a CSM, which is indication of market strength going down. Daily, also we have a little bit of downtrend, and we also have a little bit of retracement over here that indicates there's a possibility of re-entry at some point. So we go to H4, then H4, there is no setup as well. However, there is a signal that indicates an indication of a possibility of a setup coming up for us. So the signal that we have over here is obviously a CSM, because the CSM is a candle that closes outside a momentum linger band, top and low BB pointing away from each other, and obviously it signifies the market strength going down. And obviously every first CSM will create one re-entry at some point. So we know that the sell indicators is Mahi 5 and Mahi 10. So at some point the market is going there to create a re-entry. So that's one of the most important things for you as a trader to understand. Okay. So H4 tells us that there's an impending re-entry going to form somewhere. Okay. So we go to H1, then we do have a confirmation of that re-entry forming in H4. So how do I know that? Okay, because over here we have extreme. Okay, we have MHB buy, then we have candlestick Arakuko. So this is an information for us that tells us the market is going up to create a re-entry on H4. How do I know that? Because over here on the top BB we have a signal that tells us MA50 is outside the Blinger band, which indicates to me that market's gonna go sideways to create the entry on a much more higher time frame. Okay. 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 So this thing is not in the basics. It wasn't even taught to me before. But it helps me somehow to narrow down where's the re-entry at any particular juncture. So let's say we have MA50 at M15 going up. So obviously the re-entry will be at H1. Okay. Then you have, for example, M30 going up. So it's a re-entry at H4. That will be the first cycle. So there's the first sequence. For H4 re-entries, I usually deducted that there's two particular sequence for that. Okay, So the second sequence will be at H1, MA50 going outside the Bollinger Band. So this will be the second sequence. Okay, and so on. So if you have H4 going out, then the re-entry will be at D1, and so on. So that's roughly how it goes. So D1, you have weekly re-entry, weekly one, you have monthly re-entry. So it gives you an early indication of what the market is trying to do. Okay. So over here we see that MA50 is going up, so it tells me that this might be the second sequence of the H4 re-entry cell. So the first sequence could have been this point, whereby you see the market going up and then it went down. So it could be M30 first sequence. So let's just see M30. So yeah, as you can see, M30 outside Bollinger Band. So the first sequence went back down, and then it goes up again for the second sequence at H1. Okay, so that's exactly what happened over there. So now we know that the H1 time frame is trying to go up to create a re-entry at some point. So if we are going to sell, where do we sell? Okay, what is the best? Where is the best point? So this is where SNR takes place, because what I usually do is I use my SNR techniques to find the possible resistance, so that will be the place for me to set my PO or to put my entry sell. Okay, so for me the best SNR points would be the points where you have a combination of three candles. So as you can see over here, you have sell, buy, sell. Okay, so usually when you have a candle that's what do you call this, in between of two different indicators, so I usually use this to mark my SNR. Okay, so that's one of that. Then you have another one over here. Okay, because these are the points where the market hasn't gone to yet, because this point is over here, you have the market over there as well already. And obviously over here on the far left, you have another point over there. So that's on a much more higher area. Okay, so let me just delete this. All right, so those are the points that I think the market is going to, and I know the market is heading for MA50. So roughly this zone over here is my point of entry sell for H4. So if I look at it at H4, then obviously those two markups that I did was for MA5 and 10, and you also have middle BB. So that's the highest point at where I would the market would go. Okay, so let's say for example, if you have put your sell entry over here, then you know that the market might go up until to this point. So that's about 40 pips worth of floating in your risk. Okay, so basically on that particular juncture, you know that if the candle breaks middle BB of H4, then you know that it won't be an H4 re-entry. So the possibility of that, it will become a weekly one re-entry. So, but we just need to narrow down things slowly, because we have a CSM here. So there's a possibility of re-entry at H4, because every first CSM will create one re-entry. All right, so we already put down the support and resistance that we have. So these are static support and resistance, and our dynamic support and resistance is obviously the Bollinger Bands and all the moving averages we have. Okay, so we go down to the last time frame, the lowest time frame that we have. So we have M15. So usually in M15, what I usually do is, obviously I need to find out where the retracement is going to. We know the market is going up, but it's only going up to create a re-entry at H4. So that's where my Fibonacci techniques are. I'm using it to narrow down the points of where the market is trying to go. So I would say that, you know, it might go to TP2. Then there's also a possibility that it might go to TP3. Okay. So if I go to back to H1, I would see exactly where the market is trying to go. So obviously there's the zone for me to sell because it's on this SNR point, and it's also TP2 for my FIBO. Okay, and it's also what I would expect over here is an extreme. Okay, and also the highest point that this market will try to go is over here. So let's see what does it look like in H4. So essentially what my FIBO indicates to me that the market is trying to go to H4 and middle BB. That's the highest point that it will go for this retracement. So in my own experience, I would say that okay, I will just take the decision that I will take TP2, I will go for sell over here using the right codes. Okay, I started this webinar on. I usually emphasize on this particular BBMA code. So over at H4, you will have a re-entry because the re-entry happens on three particular areas. First is at MA5, which is an early re-entry. Second is at MA5, MA10, and the last re-entry would happen at middle BB. Middle BB re-entry is a movement of market minimum of 3 candlesticks, as what you can see over here. Re-entry at middle BB, you have 1, 2, 3, more than 3 candlesticks. That's the minimum of a middle BB re-entry. So in that sense, we already know the market is retracing up. We already know where's the points that we already marked up. So we have deducted that these are the SNR points, and these are the points that we're going to sell. So we know that H4 is trying to create re-entry, so this will be the re-entry over here, R. And obviously, when the market goes up at this particular juncture, what we need to expect is an extreme at top BB and MA50, so that's E. At M15, what we need to see over here before we commit that entry is obviously an MHB sell at M15. So when the market goes here, you do not go straight into the market, because let's say for example over here we have a CSM buy. So if the market continues to go up over here, then you will not lose money at all. So you wait for that particular signal and setups, because you have a possible setup of re-entry at H4, but the setup that you should entry is actually the MHB at M15. So you know exactly where it's going to happen, you know when to expect it, so you are ready for it. So when the market goes up, you have an extreme, you have TPYJ, and then you have a candle that couldn't break top BB, you have a reverse candle, and then you wait for that retest candle. That's when you entry yourself for H4 re-entry sell. So that's how I usually do my analysis, because my BBMA is more like a hybrid type, because I use all the knowledge and information that I've learned so far throughout my learning process. Because when I first started in June 2017, last year, I started with BBMA. Then I will look for SNR. I learned Fibo Musang, FMCBR. I learned candlestick formation. I learned triangles. I also recently learned MPRC4X from my friend Faisal. So when it comes to Forex, we need to constantly learning, but we need to make sure that we know what technique is our main technique, and the other techniques are only for supporting our deductions, our analysis. So this is the most important thing that we should understand with our analysis. Okay, so over here I already help you guys out how I do my analysis, how I narrow down where the market is trying to go and what should I do when that thing happens. Because as I said, this is going to be a re-entry at some point, MA5, MA10, and middle BB. Okay, so what I should expect at top BB, there should be an extreme, and at M15 there should be an MHB. So, should there be an MHB at M15, you should know what are the conditions where the MHB is invalid. Okay, so let's just say, for example, there's an MHB over here, you go for sell, and all of a sudden there's a CSM buy. So when you see a CSM buy on an MHB, then you should cut your losses while it's still short, while still small, because you know when that MHB is invalid, the next target will be at a much more higher place. So that's about 40 pips from your point of entry, 60 pips now. So you should know, you should put this in your mind that when I entry on MHB, I know where's my cut loss point, I know my TP point, and I know what are the conditions of how I'm gonna go to deal with this market. Because when you enter the market, you do not assume that the market is going down as soon as possible. There are a few things that the market is going to do. There are some fake outs. There's also maybe you will try to test this higher resistance. So you don't know this for sure because the market and the candles are not closed yet. The most important thing as a BBMA trader is to understand between two things. First is candle break and candle rejects. You have to understand those two things in order for you to have a much more better decision making process. So in order for you to decide whether a candle has break or a candle has rejected something, you need to wait for it to close before you even decide that particular decision. So I think from where we started on earlier on, this is the way that I usually do my analysis. I started from monthly and go down to M15. So monthly, weekly, daily, I have to find the deductions, what the market is trying to do, and I go to H4, H1, M15 to find that setup and signals and setup. Because if you're because I'm a scalper and also I'm an intraday trader, so I usually do my entries at H4 and M15. So if you're a swing trader, then obviously you'll be looking up for a setup at a much more higher time frame. So because monthly, weekly, and daily does not have any setup at all for you, so if you're a swing trader, there's no point for you to do any trades at this particular level. However, if H4 has provided you with a setup, then you know that's where you're gonna take that chances for you to sell. So I think that's it for this morning. Inshallah, next week I will do a webinar again on BBMA basics because I will have much more time, because this past few weeks I'm quite busy organizing stuff, and I'm currently working on the website that we're trying to build. So on that website later on we will be able to have the BBMA notes, videos and guides available to everybody, so you can just access that website from there on. So I think if there's no other questions, then I'll just stop this recording. However, after I stop this recording, I will also still have another 15 minutes for question and answer. Okay, thank you very much.